Welcome to the Speak with People podcast, where we believe that healthy communication is the key to unlocking your leadership potential. We are the go-to resource for leaders looking to greatly improve their communication skills, whether it's one-on-one interactions, team settings, public speaking, or digital communication. By improving these skills, leaders can create stronger connections and drive positive change within their organizations. Each and every episode, we sit down with experts from various fields from around the world, just like you're grabbing a coffee with them, to dive into real, practical conversations. Our goal is to help you transform your communication skills so you can lead more effectively, build stronger relationships, and make a lasting impact. So go grab your favorite drink, settle in, and let's learn together. Well, how do you build a team that stays, a culture that thrives, a business that people actually want to be a part of? Well, let's face it. I mean, if you look on the news, people are leaving jobs faster than ever. And if you look down the generations, Gen Z actually expects more. So often employees are craving meaning, trust, leadership they can believe in. And the old strategies of, potentially cool perks, ping pong tables, they're just not cutting it anymore. Today's guest, I'm so honored and excited to have on. Lis Anderson has cracked the code. She's the founder of Ambitious, a top tier PR and communications agency. She's built a thriving company culture, recruited and retained an incredible team, and built a brand rooted in trust, clarity, and connection. I am excited for this conversation. She's also a seasoned leader, a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Public Relations, champion of performance coaching and employee wellness. So if you're looking for actionable ways to lead better and communicate with purpose, this conversation is for you. Lis, this is such an honor. Thank you so much for taking the time to be on the Speak with People podcast.
Oh, well, thank you very much for having me. I'm really looking forward to the next the next hour or so to go through all of these questions.
I love it. I didn't tell you, this is an 8-hour podcast. No, I'm kidding.
Okay, I'm getting coffee.
Yeah. I think my internet will stop working around.
Yeah.
Well, I love it. This is such an honor to have you on. And I wondered, before we hop into this conversation, could you take us into your story a little bit? What's got you to this place, who you are, what you do, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, sure. So I was one of those people at school that every time on the school report, there was some kind of comment around kind of little too chatty, a little bit too active. And kind of now I reflect on that. I think kind of that was sort of an instinctive thing about me just really enjoying kind of working with people as part of kind of my kind of sort of life and career. So looking back at that sort of school report, that was definitely a skill I had then. And I think, kind of my first job, sort of in kind of PR, marketing, comms, I worked for a real character, a cigar wielding sort of ex marketing director that ran a really small family business. But what he really gave to me that I've kind of kept with me in the 30 years sort of since is trust. I got involved in so many different things, but he kind of really trusted me to just get on with it, trusted me to fail, trusted me to kind of make my own mistakes, but also, kind of instilled a lot of confidence. And basically that sort of built some real firm foundations, sort of in my early sort of career days. My experience is very much kind of agency side. I've not really worked in-house, but I work with a lot of sort of corporate clients based in the UK, but also kind of globally we work with. And I really enjoy that sort of part of kind of understanding kind of businesses and the importance of communications, when it goes well, when it doesn't go well. And that sort of really inspired me to sort of start and found Ambitious. So Ambitious have been going now for sort of be 13 years this year. So we turn teenager years. Um, and that was very much sort of built on kind of wanting to work with like minds, businesses that were also ambitious in the way that they worked, the way that they organised themselves. And certainly kind of the thread then for me at the time was very much kind of around sort of working with a lot of kind of working mums at the time that were kind of, it seems crazy nowadays because we have flexible hybrid working, but 13 years ago that just really wasn't so much a
Right.
thing. And so a lot of kind of my peers would kind of have families, want to come back and work more flexibly. That just wasn't an option. So the ambition for you to kind of carry on fulfilling your career as a working mum in agency world just kind of wasn't really a thing. And so that's very much kind of how Ambitious was founded. It's moved on. Obviously, we've had to become more inclusive ourselves and kind of grow the team, but that was very much how the business was sort of founded, on sort of people that wanted to have ambition in their careers, and I think that's a really important part of kind of ambitious values now within the business.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, you think about 13 years ago, yeah, it was such a rarity if someone was like, "Oh yeah, I can work in the office one day, but then I can work wherever I want." It's just unheard of.
Yeah.
And now I don't know how it is in Bristol. I mean, more and more companies here in the US are basically saying, "Hey, you got to be back in the office 3 days or 4 days. You still have a flex day." But there's been a pretty decent fight.
Very much so. I mean, we mandate whether that's the right thing or not. It's right for our culture, but we mandate and have since certainly since COVID mandated a minimum of 3 days in the office, for lots of different reasons. And sometimes actually some of the particularly the younger team like to be in there more often than that. And I think, yeah, sort of that's certainly what we've sort of found, kind of works for us, and a lot of our clients want to meet face to face more so. So I think kind of it's definitely more of a sort of commonplace now in terms of, certainly in the creative sector, collaborating kind of face to face. I think kind of certainly works in some industries maybe more than it does in others.
Yeah, absolutely. I know for me personally, I work from home. We're a small family business, and there are days that I miss being, in a office, a place with a team, bouncing ideas. I look forward to those days. So I dream of getting to the 13-year mark. Congratulations. Hope your knees are okay because you guys are, in those teenage years.
Yeah, growing
Uh,
pains. Yeah.
yes. So you talk about running a happy business. What does it look like in practice? Why does that matter? Aren't people there to work? Aren't your clients there to get, stuff from you? Talk us through that.
Through that, yeah. I think, for me, a happy business is around creating an environment where people can thrive, and happiness can mean lots of different things to lots of different people. And I think it's almost kind of where that culture, well-being, commercial piece comes together.
Yes.
Because actually for some people, being in a place that they feel safe is really important for them. For some people, being in a place where they know that they can have financial reward is really important to them. And I think also what's quite interesting where we look at our team, so we haven't had, certainly on the client services side, any leavers for the past sort of 5 years. People change in terms of their life journey over that period. So being a workplace that, can be flexible, because people are at different life stages. So one of the things that we're experiencing now is, kind of people that started with us sort of 5 or so years ago, and now they've bought the houses, kind of they're getting married with their partner stage, and kind of we're seeing quite a few sort of, babies into the mix. And so actually that's a different need and a different mindset. So I think kind of being able to kind of, offer flexibility and really understand that from an employer's perspective is really important. How that kind of looks in practice, I think, is around having high trust, ensuring people are kind of aren't fearful in their workplace, and being really clear about your purpose. And you would expect me to say this, and obviously I'm in the right place, but communications becomes absolutely paramount,
Mm,
um, for that. It's a really, really critical, important part for leaders, not just at the top of the organisation, but anybody that's involved in any sort of leadership, and managing sort of teams. So people feel safe to speak up, to contribute, know that what they're saying is valued, know that they're sort of respected. And I think, kind of there's so much research out there around happy businesses outperform those that aren't. So
yeah.
in terms of an ROI, there's that sort of commercial success, to doing it. So there's a reason for investing in creating a happy place
Oof.
for
I
employers to.
I love that. I love that. 20 years ago, I was working on an MBA, had a class where they handed us Primal Leadership by Daniel Goleman. And I started reading it and I was just shocked because he says, "Hey, emotionally intelligent companies tap into employees' positive, happy emotions, and the research shows they're actually more productive." And I just assumed maybe because of the companies I was in, you're supposed to lead from fear and control, and nobody's supposed to enjoy it.
Yeah.
My
I know
life
it's
changed.
great.
That book changed the course of it. Helped, really influence a lot of what we do now with our communication. So, speak to us a little bit about communication. What have you learned from founding something, starting something, leading a team? How important it is to I mean, you got so many different levels of team members you need to communicate with and help them with. How do you keep your eye focused on making sure you're communicating to everyone?
I think maybe kind of not one of the biggest barriers, but almost kind of when the penny drops, if that's the right saying to use, is when you actually realise as a business leader that that is part of your job. It's
Mm.
not something that you're trying to sort of cram in alongside putting together a sort of a proposition or a new business deck or dealing with your customers. It is your job. And I think that's maybe kind of one of the things that kind of we do quite well in our business is recognize that that part is an important part, and allocating the time as part of resources to make sure that happen. Not it's just something that you try and sort of cram in. It is a really important part of your job, and then we put various sort of structures in place to make that happen and try and formalize that. um, but yeah, I think it's a deliberate,
Mm.
important part of your job as sort of a leader, not just kind of a nice to have.
Right, right. And it's probably going on with that culture is just, having the importance of the coaching and the performance coaching. How has that played a role in the culture you've built and ambitious?
Yeah, so I think one of the things to realize, and very much kind of with the performance coaching that we do, is kind of that is also not what we do. What we are experts at it is sort of PR, strategic comms, and content. And so sometimes you need help from people that understand that as a skill better. So one of the things that we did actually post COVID was invest in an external sort of expert to help us put together a program and deliver a program
Oh,
of
wow.
performance coaching. And the route that we took for that was with a disc profiling, which I mean, there's lots of different profiling around there, but that's kind of where what we landed on. And that almost, I think, kind of we is fair to say in terms of a marker in the sand and a game changer for us, because it really helped everybody in the team understand themselves first. Maybe kind of, if whether that's sort of dominance or influence, or if you're familiar with disc, sort of some of the
Hmm.
terminology around that. And so if you're self-aware, then you're more aware of others. And if you're self-aware, then that's not just about kind of how you deal with your colleagues. That might be a skill or something that you put into play with dealing with clients or suppliers or that type of thing. And so we really have seen a benefit of that in terms of sort of how everybody in the team has developed their self-awareness, that relates to sort of emotional intelligence, better communication skills, being much more aware of how you're communicating with others to get ultimately kind of what you want, progress tasks, come up with strategies, whatever that kind of might be. And I think what it has done, and I know not everybody is a fan of things like sort of disc profile, but it's given our team kind of a collective language and tools that we all recognize around kind of feedback and accountability, and almost sort of a process. Whereas maybe sometimes if you leave those things to chance, of course it's not to say that that doesn't work, but sometimes having a framework that's recognized that you can be trained in, that you can get external support to help, and then you kind of embed that into the business, we found really helpful for ambitious, because everybody knows kind of what they're dealing with and how to deal with that, rather than the experience of one person being how they might coach, or one, so that type of thing, really, if that makes sense.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I was in a company not too long ago and they use disc, and as you walked through the company on the desks, on offices, on cubicles, on underneath their nameplate, they actually had what their disc
Yeah.
was. And I love that. I was like, "Okay, I'm walking into a high D's. All right, I'm gonna come in with energy," like That's
Yeah, and it
fantastic.
can make a difference, and I think people, sometimes, and certainly for some people in the team, it's been a real kind of personal recognition to think, okay, well right, that is why I really love the detail, or that is why I have to, kind of jazz hands everything and get everybody involved because that's my personality type,
Yes.
and it has really, really sort of helped, I think, kind of break down quite a few sort of barriers, and we're big fans of it, for sure.
I love that. And that kind of investment, especially as I get to interview so many incredible leaders like yourself from around the globe. It's amazing when you see some of the folks that are succeeding or taking some ground in some places that others aren't. It's because they're taking the time to invest in people. Have you ever can you take us back to a time in your leadership where it kind of finally clicked? Okay, in order for myself, ambitious to get ahead, I've got to pour into my people, make sure, they're learning and growing and developing. Was there some type of click, or was that early mentor? Did they, pour that into you?
Yeah, I think it probably wasn't sort of a particular life bulb moment, but throughout my career, I've always really enjoyed peer-to-peer mentoring and had a real benefit from that. So outside of my kind of main paying job, whether that's being involved in my a trade body, which is the Chartered Institute of Public Relations, or for the past few years, I'm sort of co-chair of an organisation called Bristol Creative Industries, which we've got about 1,500 members, allows me to kind of connect and talk and have kind of peer-to-peer, I guess, sort of value, and I've always benefited from that, and
Mm,
so I can really see the benefit of bringing that type of approach, sort of also into the workplace, where kind of that communication bit is really important. That opportunity to talk to somebody and share a problem or a challenge, and so I've really benefited from that, and so I've been keen to kind of pass
so good.
on sort of to others. Um, you're never alone. Well, you don't have to be alone in kind of
Right.
what you're doing, for sure.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I just read a great book called Never Lead Alone by Keith Ferrazzi. And
Okay.
it just spoke right to that. I mean, it's just so powerful. I absolutely love that. It was incredible. So uh, we live in an interesting day and age. I mean, four generations, sometimes five, working together. Gen Z is. I've got some Gen Z kids of my own. It's an interesting, group. They're the first pure digital natives. They don't know what it's like not to get information, you know, I don't wanna place you in a category. I'll just assume, we're
Not that
probably in a closer category. We had to go to a library or look in a phone book,
much. Yes, yes, I know. Yes, I'm with you, yeah.
Yes. So, I as you recruit, lead, retain, look to build into Gen Z, how's your approach been? What are some of your learnings? What are some of the things that you've, picked up there go, okay, they're different than my Gen X team, and I've got to be able to lead them this way. Would love to know any of your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very much, and as you already highlighted, quite a lot of that research, is around kind of the why. So the kind of driven by, the purpose of our business, that sense of belonging, kind of where we're heading, what sort of our mission is. It is important to everybody, but it's really, really important to Gen Z.
Yeah.
Um, and I think kind of, if I was to sort of flip that around, I think that's been really helpful to learn from that generation and make sure that we're kind of turning up the volume on that. And that's, kind of a key part, I think, of maybe what we've taken from that generation to bring into the business and turn up the volume, not just to attract and retain Gen Z, but actually kind of maybe how sort of some of those things also can be really important to other employees. And I think, sort of what we have tried really hard to do, is kind of give people in our business a role that is above and beyond their job. So actually, kind of if one of the things that you really like doing is kind of sort of mentoring, that might be that you kind of get involved in our internship program and help the rolling, sort of program that we have with the interns coming in every month, or actually, kind of if that's something that you want to get involved with because we're onboarding a whole load of AI into our business and you're really interested in that, or you can be part of a team that's involved in that and a working group to do that. Or actually, as we're kind of going through our B Corp assessment now, if that is really important to you, then you could be part of that working group. So the job is the job in terms of what we're employing people to do in terms of their main skills, but everybody in the team has a something else. And I think that becomes really important to how people feel connected to the business and feel that they kind of have extra value to add above and beyond that supports their sense of belonging.
Oh, I
And
love
I think
that.
the other bit that we're really clear on is our purpose and our mission. Again, we're a PR company, so you would expect us to tell a decent story around that.
Yes.
Um, but it is part of that, and the importance of repeating that and keeping people updated on that. Yeah, and so everybody kind of plays their part. It's not, communications and the activities that we do are not just around from the leadership team. Everybody is involved in kind of the business in that
Yeah.
way.
Oh, I love that. So go back to the beginning for a second, because as a founder, we'll be turning 3 this year. I don't really count the first year because, to be very frank, I have no idea what I was doing. I still don't, but every
Yeah.
day I'm learning more and more. But in the early years, I've listened to other founders talk about, you've got to be the lead prospector, you've got to be the lead content creator, you've got to be the lead ops person. What were those early years like for you? How did you juggle that, manage it? What was something that you learned? Were you all on your own? Did you have other people when you launched? Would love to know your part of the journey for that.
Yeah, so I sort of founded the business with a former work colleague. She's no longer involved in the business now. Now the business is myself and my business partner Sarah. So we own and run the business. So between us, we also have a managing director that joined us sort of last year. But I think kind of in those early years, you have to accept, and I think my lad now, who's was just gone to 18 months, 2 years old when I launched the business. So kind of that was the other juggle. So I
Wow.
think kind of you sort of realise that maybe it's not possible to have everything all at once. And so there are some aspects of kind of compromise in that area. I'm really lucky that kind of I have my husband, my partner was really supportive around me starting the business. So that meant that quite a lot of the funds to get childcare in place so that I could kind of work full time, we both subscribed to and signed up for. So very much kind of that partnership piece. And I think you absolutely understand the process of multitasking. Until then you're in a position to start kind of making those first hires, and the business expands, and kind of you probably then get involved, or more involved in things that you're sort of best suited to.
Yep.
But certainly when you're starting, kind of you're involved in absolutely everything. But maybe for sort of business founders, that is also part of what appeals, is the hunger and the interest to kind of learn about stuff and get stuff done. Yeah, I think kind of there's definitely sort of
So
something
good.
in that. You kind of manage the art of multitasking
Yes.
and compromise and
Yeah.
late night.
and, and then you realize, why would anyone do this?
Yeah.
But then you get to
Right.
that place where it is a pretty magical opportunity and ability, and yeah, absolutely love. So you run a PR firm, in your mind and direction, what's kind of the simplest definition of PR that there is?
I think it's probably around sort of reputation. So reputation management, maintenance, creation, and ultimately kind of influencing and engaging people inside and outside of the organization to think, feel, and do something about you as a brand. That's probably how I would
Wow.
encapsulate it. Yeah.
Wow. Do you guys work with primarily companies? Do you do authors? Is it like just a certain area, or do you have a multifaceted, as you look at different places?
Yeah. So our specialism tends to be sort of business to business and corporate, rather than we don't tend to get involved working with consumer brands. So the sectors that we work in, and really that's more about kind of our sort of interests, a lot of tech, education, professional services, healthcare. So those tend to be sort of the areas that we kind of sort of specialize in: property, construction, built environment, that type of thing.
Wow. So, but when you launched, did you have a passion towards one way, like sales, going, prospecting, building the relationships, going after the clients? Were you more of the creative mind? How did that work for you guys?
Yeah, so kind of I guess kind of so my personal background is I've worked in lots of different sectors. I worked for quite a few years within leisure hospitality, working for big drinks brands and pub chains, that type of thing. And I think in terms of the gap in the market that was sort of presented was around kind of really decent sort of B2B PR and B2B comms, and making that kind of not boring, and doing that in a really engaging way. And so that really sort of is what fueled, I guess, the opportunities, looking at kind of the gap in the market, and also kind of where there was an opportunity to look at more sort of substantial sort of fees in terms of sort of retainers, bigger projects, and also I think kind of probably sort of stronger relationships with the clients, because of the understanding and appreciation of having really good experience in particular sectors
Mm,
becomes really valuable in sort of B2B comms and marketing. So that's why we've focused in that area.
yeah. So maybe too deep, and take us as deep as you want. But have you had a moment where you lost a client that you didn't see coming, and it just maybe took your breath away, or was a punch in the gut, and you're like, "Ooh, how do we move forward after this?"
Yeah, I think sometimes the hard so there's a sort of few things of late. L- Almost kind of in the UK when sort of COVID hit, literally overnight we had lost about 75% of our client base. And that was a massive glass of red wine, what's going to happen moment, where actually
Wow.
I think, kind of where I've talked about before, kind of getting advice and counsel from other people. Nobody knew how to work their way through that. So
Yeah.
you are on your own. And so I think, situation really kind of focused the mind in terms of kind of the priorities and looking after the team. And so you've got a team that's really anxious about jobs and roles. You kind of need to plow in and dig in. So yeah, that was kind of quite a sort of a stressful sort of scenario. And I think kind of as the business grows, where you are the main gatekeeper for the relationship, that's something that you can kind of control. So if your client's really happy, that's something that you've enabled. If your client's not so happy, they're maybe having a one-to-one conversation with you, and you can try and resolve that sort of quickly. As the business grows and you're building up a team, then the client relationships have to expand, because it's not possible, kind of in when you're sort of turning over what, sort of 2.5 million or whatever that might be. You can't do that all yourself. So
Right.
actually, how you trust your team and back your team and support your team when things are going right and when things are going wrong becomes a change for you, I think, as a founder. And so it's not that you don't take those things personally, but I think you have to spend more time equipping and supporting your team when things don't go right, because you weren't at the heart of that. You're at the heart of that because it's your business, but your action or the way in which you've supported that client, or if they're not happy about something that's done, you might have not done that directly, but you're responsible for that. And I think that is one of the bigger challenges in terms of how you evolve and mature as a business owner in your own business, where you have to support the team that are involved in looking after things that you were once solely responsible for.
Right. Right. Wow. Wow. Absolutely. That's a good one. Have you had a place, or have you had to, maybe in your past, where the culture was kind of going, the team culture was kind of going in a direction that you didn't think was the healthiest, the right direction, and there's so many things going on. Your time and attention just didn't get at it until it got to a place where you're like, oh wow, we've got to really work on this. What are some of those ways to recognize it, and then some ways to fix it once you get there?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said about kind of gut, as in it's easy sometimes to reflect maybe when you're out of a toxic culture, but when you're in it, getting up, doing the day job, getting the paycheck, that's sometimes quite hard to sort of understand what fundamentally is the problem. But I think, kind of the quite often sort of the further up the leadership chain that you go within an organization, the more that you do realize that, kind of a more toxic culture is really costly. It takes so much more time because you're having to kind of rectify more problems, whether that's, kind of you've got a revolving door with people in and out of the business. You're having to sort out what potentially are HR issues, but actually that might be around sort of stress of team, which is caused by bad leadership. So just the resource that's required to rectify a toxic work environment above and beyond everybody trying to do their day job becomes really, really clear. I think that's certainly kind of one of the ways. And then, kind of how you can put that right. Obviously, then sort of quite often depends on your sort of role within that organization. Sometimes, that's not in your control, for all the reasons.
Wow. Wow. When a team member is just winning, they're, to you, to the management team, they're doing a great job. What are some of those key, attributes, characteristics? What are some of those key markers that you look at them and go, wow, they're really succeeding?
I think, maybe that goes back a little bit to your first question about happiness. Are they happy? Have they got a spring in their step? Sometimes it's around, how they're sort of presenting themselves, having pride in their work, kind of really engaged in terms of coming up with different ideas, challenging kind of what you're doing, not in a necessarily a negative way, but kind of being productive because actually they're in deep enough and they care enough and they're motivated enough to kind of want to improve things. So actually, kind of that also I think is a really good sign. Whereas sometimes kind of silence is a really good indicator of people not really being engaged or happy because they're not really engaged in maybe kind of what you're doing. Whereas people that are kind of coming up with new ideas and challenging and kind of putting extra sort of voice into what they're doing, I think is a really good indicator as to how engaged people are in what you're doing and what you're trying to create, above and beyond. Do they understand kind of what you're trying to do in terms of sort of your growth figures and your values and all of the things that are part of the business. It's more about kind of their individual behavior, and what else they're kind of bringing to the party, I find.
Yeah, I love that. Boy, that's so good. Kind of lastly, as we kind of round this conversation, when it comes to your own personal communication journey, what are some of the, you know, how would you encourage, motivate, some of our listeners around their communication? Maybe some of the things that you've learned about your own communication skills and, different moments where you've had to work on improving them, or, learning how important there are. Anything that you would, leave our listeners with when it comes to their communication skills.
Yeah, I think kind of, I would say, I think, having an understanding of who you are and your sort of style, so that it's as authentic is really important. I think kind of I really my sort of style tends to be probably a bit more sort of empathetic. So for me that was learning that maybe kind of nice is probably not the right approach, but you can have a kind working environment. I don't have to be nice all the time. And that was probably for me kind of driven by, not wanting to be too confrontational or too kind of sort of direct. So I think kind of investing in knowing yourself so that you are an authentic leader, true to yourself, because certainly as we were saying kind of with Gen Z or anybody in the team, people are looking for that and can see through you. So if you're trying to be something that you're not, that doesn't really kind of create for great sort of leadership. So I think kind of the investment to know yourself and how then you know kind of make the right sort of approaches and investments to kind of develop yourself
Mm.
to be a better leader is probably the main thing, really.
Oh, I love that. Oh, that's powerful. Before I leave you, we're putting together this online library for leaders to go and get ideas for new resources. Is there a speaker that you have heard that just, boy, uh, they check all the boxes, fill you up? You highly recommend them to other people.
Probably not a speaker, but I know when we were looking at the questions, I think you'd also asked around, you know, kind of sort of podcasts and also kind of a book. So I've got a few ideas on that. I think for speakers, I'm a big fan of, not that I necessarily agree with all of them, but kind of the sort of politicians and the skill in which they have, and either doing a good job or a bad job. So um, I'm an avid viewer of PMQs, which is our Prime Minister's questions every Wednesday, because I think in terms of good or bad communications, that is a really good live place to kind of watch how it can go terribly wrong or really well.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah. As a speaker myself, you know, how politicians manage that some days. I mean, it is incredible. The questions all the time, the questions that try to get around the question to try to trick
yeah,
you. I mean, all of that stuff.
yeah.
It's just
It's
amazing.
impressive. Yeah.
Yeah. If you're a podcast listener, not everybody is, but is there one that's either, guilty pleasure, you love your true crime or gardening or whatever, or development podcast that you just kind of keep going back to?
Yeah, so I would say my favourite podcast is a podcast by Dan Snow, which is History Hit.
Mm.
Um, and that covers everything from legends to leaders. And I think there is a lot that we can learn about the past in terms of the future. So he does some really good sort of sessions from really good juicy stuff from everybody from Napoleon to Elizabeth I to all sorts of things. So I think kind of looking back to look forward is a guilty pleasure of mine. So
I
that's
love that.
Dan Snow's History Hit.
I
It's
love
good.
that. Is there a book that you highly recommend for leaders? You just say, hey, at some point in your leadership, you've got to read this book.
Yeah, so I think there is, and it might be kind of sort of slightly kind of off sort of traditional books, but I think I would sort of recommend it's an illustrated book by an artist called Charlie Mackey, and it's called The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. Um, and it's not necessarily got any methodology or anything like that, but it is a wonderful storybook that is about empathy and understanding and resilience and about the value of connection. And so I would recommend that to any leader to just take a bit of time out to think about that and reflect. So it's very different to every other leader book about I did this, you should do that. So if you're into that type of slight escapism, it's a beautiful book, and its core message and its underlining is around sort of human contact and the value of connection. So
Ah,
that's my recommendation.
I love it. I love it. This has been amazing. Thank you so much for your time, sharing your generosity. Where's the best place we can send our listeners to find more about you, your company, everything that you do online?
Yeah, so we're at Ambitious PR on Instagram and our website. We also have a podcast called Thoughtful Leadership,
Mm.
which is looking at how different leaders, sort of in business, approach that within sort of their organisations, particularly around things like sort of communications. And then I'm on LinkedIn, Lis Anderson. So love to connect, answer any questions if anybody has any, and that's where you can find us.
Ah, wonderful. Well, thank you again. And this was absolutely great. Appreciate it.
Great. Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of the Speak with People podcast. It means the world to us when you share this episode. Thanks for liking, subscribing, or following the podcast. That really does help the podcast get into more ears and into more leaders listening. Also, don't forget, we have 2 exciting resources for you. The first is go to Facebook and join the Speakers Group. This is a community designed for leaders who want to grow their communication skills. Also, go to speakwithpeople.com/give Skills Library to access the Communication Skills Library. It is an online resource chock filled with resources that will inspire you and transform you and grow your communication skills. Thanks again for being a part of the listening community. We cannot wait for the next episode.